Have you ever wondered why some people seem to have a hidden strength that no amount of manipulation can break? Deep down, you know what it feels like to sense someone's energy before they even speak, to read between the lines of their words, and to feel their intentions more deeply than they can hide. That is the rare and extraordinary gift of a super empath, a person whose sensitivity is not a weakness, but a force so powerful it can disarm the most manipulative personalities, including the narcissist who thrives on control. A super empath doesn't just feel emotions, they see patterns. They recognize unspoken pain, masked insecurity, and the fragile ego hiding beneath a narcissist's charm. This awareness creates an inner strength that can quietly dismantle the narcissist's entire strategy without a single outburst or confrontation. Where others might react in anger or fear, the super empath responds with calm certainty. This balance of heart and mind is the very thing a narcissist cannot handle, because it leaves them with no control, no reaction to exploit, and no chaos to feed on. Imagine standing in the presence of someone who tries to provoke you, twist your reality, or make you doubt your worth, and instead of breaking, you feel grounded, calm, and unshakably sure of who you are. That is the emotional armor of a super empath. It is the strength of someone who has faced hurt but refused to let it harden their heart, someone who understands that real power lies not in revenge, but in self-mastery. The reason this is so powerful is simple. Narcissists feed on emotional energy. They crave admiration, fear, or even anger because it confirms their control. But when you can see through their behavior, when you recognize their tactics without absorbing their poison, you take away their fuel. You become untouchable, and in that moment, the balance of power shifts. They are left with their own emptiness, forced to face the void they've been running from. This is not about becoming cold or heartless. It's about becoming so aligned with your own worth that no one can shake it. It's about turning your sensitivity into strength and your awareness into freedom. And as you continue to watch, you will discover exactly how a super empath uses boundaries, silence, and emotional intelligence to not only protect themselves, but also send a narcissist into a quiet kind of torment, the kind that comes from losing control over someone they thought they could own. Stay with this message, because by the end, you will not only understand the true power of a super empath, but you will also feel it awaken within you. The strength to rise above manipulation, to claim your peace, and to step fully into the kind of life no narcissist can ever touch. What truly drives a narcissist to manipulate, control, and dominate is not strength, but fear. Beneath their carefully crafted persona lies a fragile core, an emptiness so deep that it terrifies them to confront it. Every arrogant remark, every calculated move, every attempt to belittle or confuse is rooted in a desperate need to mask the truth of who they are. This hidden weakness is what a super empath can sense, and it is the reason their very presence becomes a mirror the narcissist cannot bear to face. A narcissist thrives on illusion. They project confidence, charm, and superiority, but beneath the surface exists a deep, unhealed wound. An inner voice that whispers they are not enough. This is why they seek constant validation. This is why they manipulate others to maintain an image of control. And yet, when standing before someone who sees through the act, who cannot be deceived by flattery or fear, their illusion begins to crumble. The super empath doesn't just notice their behavior, they feel the emptiness behind it, and that awareness shakes the narcissist at their core. This is not about shaming or seeking revenge. It is about recognizing that their manipulative nature is driven by an internal war, a battle between who they pretend to be and who they truly are. A super empath holds up an invisible mirror and, without even trying, forces the narcissist to glimpse the truth. That truth is painful. It reveals that the power they believed they had over others was never real. It exposes the hollow center of their identity. It stirs a sense of fear they work tirelessly to avoid. The torment comes not from confrontation, but from exposure. When someone no longer reacts to their games, when their words lose the ability to wound, when their attempts to provoke are met with calm clarity, the narcissist is left to face the silence within themselves. And for someone who thrives on external control, that silence feels like chaos. It is the beginning of a collapse they cannot stop. For those who have felt the sting of narcissistic manipulation, understanding this is liberating. It shows that you never needed to fight harder, shout louder, or prove your worth. The true shift happens when you step into your own strength, when you stop feeding their illusion and start living from your own truth. That is where freedom begins. That is where the chains of control start to break. And for the narcissist, it is where the real torture begins, not through anger or retaliation, but through the quiet power of someone who can no longer be deceived. Strength is not always loud. Sometimes it is the quiet, unshakable decision to set boundaries and refuse to let someone cross them. A narcissist despises boundaries because they thrive on overstepping them. They want access to your emotions, your time, your energy, and your mind. They believe they are entitled to all of it without question. But the moment you draw a clear line, you disrupt the foundation of their control. You show them that their influence is no longer absolute. You remind them that you, not they, decide where your peace begins and ends. Boundaries are more than words. They are energy. They are choices that reinforce self-worth. When a super empath says no, it carries weight because it is not fueled by anger or fear. It is spoken with calm certainty, the kind that cannot be negotiated or manipulated. This level of strength is unsettling for the narcissist because it exposes their dependency. Without your compliance, their entire strategy falls apart. Without your emotional reaction, their tactics lose power. Without your willingness to bend, they have nothing to push against. Every time you enforce a boundary, you send a silent but powerful message. You see through their act and you will no longer play along. That message is more painful to a narcissist than any argument because it robs them of their illusion of dominance. It forces them to confront the uncomfortable reality that they are not in control and that their ability to manipulate is crumbling. Boundaries do not just protect you. They become a mirror reflecting the narcissist's deepest fear, irrelevance. For the empath, boundaries are not walls. They are gateways to self-respect. They are declarations of inner strength that say, I value my peace more than your chaos. They are proof that compassion does not require self-sacrifice, that kindness can coexist with firmness, and that love for oneself is the highest form of strength. This realization transforms the dynamic completely. The narcissist can no longer feed on your energy, and you are no longer weighed down by their endless need for control. The power of boundaries is that they speak louder than words. They do not argue, they do not justify, they do not explain. They simply stand. And in their presence, the narcissist begins to feel what they fear most, powerlessness. This is where their facade begins to crack and where you begin to rise, because every boundary you enforce is not just a line they cannot cross, it is a step toward reclaiming your life, your confidence, and your freedom. It is a declaration that your worth is no longer negotiable and your soul is no longer for sale. There is a moment when the narcissist begins to sense something they cannot explain. It is the feeling of being seen in a way that strips away their carefully crafted facade. A super empath possesses a gift that goes beyond observation. They mirror. Without conscious effort, they reflect the narcissist's behavior back to them, not through imitation, but through quiet truth. This mirror shows them who they really are, and for someone who has built their life on illusion, that reflection is unbearable. Mirroring works because it bypasses words and dives directly into the realm of energy and presence. When a narcissist attempts to project superiority, the empath does not argue. They simply hold steady, unshaken, exuding self-assurance that makes the narcissist feel their own insecurity more acutely. When manipulation is used to provoke an emotional response, the empath stays calm, forcing the narcissist to feel the emptiness of their tactic. When lies are told to distort reality, the empath's unwavering clarity makes the deception glaringly obvious. Every action is silently reflected back, revealing not the image the narcissist wants to project, but the truth they are desperate to hide. This reflection cuts deeper than criticism ever could because it forces the narcissist to face their own shadow. For a personality built on denial and pretense, seeing evidence of their flaws, weaknesses, and fear staring back at them is a form of inner torment. They are forced to feel emotions they cannot control, shame, anxiety, and vulnerability, all of which they have spent their life running from. And the empath does this not by attacking, but simply by being deeply present and fully authentic. There is a psychological power in holding up a mirror, not just for the narcissist, but for yourself. It affirms that you are no longer lost in their chaos. You are no longer absorbing their projections. You have become a clear reflection of reality. And that reality is something they can no longer twist. The result is a slow but undeniable unraveling of their confidence, as their power to deceive diminishes with every silent, unflinching glance of truth. This is why self-awareness is one of the super empath's greatest strengths. It does not just protect you, it transforms the dynamic entirely. The narcissist is no longer in control of the narrative because the truth has been exposed, and when the truth is revealed, illusions can no longer hold. You become the mirror that shows them the parts of themselves they fear most, and in that reflection, their control begins to shatter. There is a weapon more powerful than words, more piercing than confrontation, and more unsettling than anger. It is silence. Silence is not emptiness, it is strength contained. It is a deliberate choice to disengage from manipulation and refuse to provide the emotional reaction a narcissist craves. When faced with silence, their entire strategy collapses because without your response, there is nothing to feed on, nothing to twist, and nothing to exploit. A narcissist thrives on chaos. They seek to provoke reactions, anger, fear, guilt, or confusion, because these emotions keep you tied to their control. Every argument, every defensive explanation, every attempt to prove yourself only fuels their illusion of dominance. But when you respond with silence, you create a void they cannot tolerate. The absence of reaction forces them to sit with their own emptiness. It is like holding up a mirror that reflects not just their flaws, but the lack of true power behind their behavior. Silence is not passive, it is deeply active. It requires self-control, awareness, and emotional strength. It means refusing to be drawn into battles that cannot be won, because the only victory worth claiming is peace. It communicates that your energy, your attention, and your inner world are no longer available for their games. And while they may attempt to provoke even harder, the lack of reaction leaves them spiraling into frustration, confusion, and self-doubt. The very thing they fear most, the loss of control, becomes undeniable. This form of quiet strength also serves another purpose. It reminds you of your own power. It proves that you are no longer at the mercy of external forces, no longer defined by someone else's chaos. Every time you choose silence over conflict, you reinforce your commitment to inner peace. You remind yourself that your life is not a stage for someone else's drama, but a sanctuary for your growth, clarity, and self-respect. The psychological impact of silence on a narcissist is profound. It denies them the fuel of emotional response. It forces them to look inward, a place they desperately avoid. And it leaves them with the sinking realization that their ability to control you has slipped through their fingers. This is not about winning a battle of words. It is about stepping completely out of the battle and into a higher state of being, one where peace becomes your shield and silence becomes your greatest power. When silence becomes your response, you are no longer playing their game. You are writing your own rules. And in doing so, you dismantle the foundation of their control, leaving them to face what they fear most, the emptiness they can no longer escape. Growth is the moment when you realize you no longer need to match their chaos, defend your worth, or prove your value. The narcissist thrives in a world where your attention stays locked on them, where your energy fuels their games. But the super empath reaches a point where their focus turns inward, not out of selfishness, but out of necessity. Healing becomes the priority. Evolving becomes the mission. And in that shift, the narcissist begins to lose the very thing they depend on most, your participation. Outgrowing a narcissist does not happen overnight. It is a gradual awakening, a process of peeling away illusions and rediscovering your strength piece by piece. It begins with small realizations that your peace is more important than their approval, that your self-worth is not measured by their acceptance, and that your life is not meant to revolve around fixing someone who refuses to heal themselves. With every step you take toward growth, their control weakens. The hooks they once used to pull you back, guilt, fear, or false affection, no longer hold the same weight. They cannot reach someone who has outgrown their reach. What unsettles a narcissist most is watching someone they believed they owned transform before their eyes. Growth means you no longer engage in the same arguments. You no longer seek validation from the same empty source. You no longer react to the same tired provocations. You rise above them, not to hurt them, but because your soul has simply outgrown the prison they built. And that is a kind of freedom they cannot comprehend because they are still trapped within themselves. Personal growth carries a quiet kind of defiance. It says, I choose my evolution over your chaos. I choose my healing over your games. I choose my future over your control. Every decision rooted in growth chips away at their influence. Every moment spent building your strength leaves them powerless to affect you. They are forced to watch as you become someone they cannot reach, cannot manipulate, and cannot diminish. The greatest form of strength is not found in confrontation, but in transformation. It is the courage to walk away from cycles that no longer serve you. It is the willingness to rise so high in self-awareness and confidence that their shadow can no longer touch your light. This is where the empath becomes unshakable, not because they fought harder, but because they chose to grow beyond the reach of manipulation. And in doing so, they deliver the greatest blow of all, living free, untethered, and untouchable by the very person who once believed they held all the power. Compassion is one of the greatest strengths of a super empath, but it is also one of the most misunderstood. Many mistake compassion for tolerance, believing it means allowing harmful behavior to continue. But real compassion is rooted in clarity. It sees the truth of a person's pain without surrendering to their chaos. It understands their wounds but refuses to become collateral damage in the process. This form of compassion is what ultimately disarms a narcissist because it offers no fuel, no argument, and no opening for control. When compassion is balanced with self-respect, it becomes an unshakable force. It does not seek to change or rescue the narcissist, nor does it feed their ego by offering endless forgiveness for repeated harm. Instead, it draws a line that says, I see your struggle, but I will not let it consume me. This stance is powerful because it removes the drama the narcissist craves while preserving the empath's integrity. They can no longer twist kindness into weakness or use love as leverage. The dynamic shifts and the narcissist begins to sense that their influence is slipping away. Clarity is what transforms compassion into strength. It allows you to care without enabling. It allows you to understand without excusing. It allows you to remain kind while still walking away when necessary. This balanced energy is deeply unsettling to a narcissist because it dismantles their belief that they can control you through guilt, pity, or emotional manipulation. They are left standing in the face of unconditional strength, something they cannot exploit no matter how hard they try. For the super empath, this form of compassion is liberating. It removes the weight of responsibility for someone else's healing and places the focus back on their own growth. It affirms that self-love is not selfishness, that protecting your peace is not cruelty, and that valuing your well-being does not diminish your humanity. It is a declaration that says, I can care, but I will not carry. This realization marks the moment when emotional freedom becomes non-negotiable. To a narcissist, this is torture, not because you are cruel, but because you no longer feed the cycle that sustains them. You no longer provide the emotional highs and lows they depend on. You have transformed compassion from a tool they could use into a shield they cannot penetrate. And in doing so, you reveal the one truth they fear most, that they have no real power over someone who has learned to love with strength, see with clarity, and stand with unshakable resolve. Illusions are the foundation of a narcissist's world. They build images of superiority, charm, and control to hide the vulnerability they refuse to face. But illusions cannot withstand the presence of someone who sees the truth. A super empath does not attack these false images directly. They simply live in alignment with authenticity. That authenticity becomes a light so strong it dissolves the shadows of deceit, revealing everything the narcissist has worked so hard to conceal. When illusions collapse, the narcissist feels exposed in a way that is deeply unsettling. The persona they present to the world no longer works. The strategies they once used to manipulate emotions lose their effect. The empath's calm, grounded presence makes every falsehood transparent, every pretense hollow, every performance meaningless. The narcissist is forced to confront an unbearable reality. Their power only existed as long as others believed in the illusion. Once belief is gone, control evaporates. This collapse is not loud or dramatic. It happens quietly, almost imperceptibly. As the empath refuses to engage in false narratives, refuses to react to emotional bait, and refuses to provide the validation the narcissist craves. Each refusal chips away at the facade, leaving the narcissist feeling smaller, weaker, and more desperate to regain control. But the harder they try, the more evident their insecurity becomes, until the illusion crumbles under its own weight. For the empath, this is not about triumphing over someone else. It is about reclaiming truth. Living authentically means no longer questioning your perception, no longer doubting your intuition, and no longer accepting distorted versions of reality. It means trusting your inner knowing even when others attempt to convince you otherwise. That level of self-trust is what shatters manipulation because it cannot survive in the presence of clarity. The collapse of illusions is not just a defeat for the narcissist, it is a victory for freedom. It marks the end of emotional control and the beginning of self-sovereignty. The empath emerges stronger, clearer, and more empowered, while the narcissist is left grappling with the emptiness that their illusions once covered. And though they may try to rebuild, the cracks are permanent, because once the truth is seen, it cannot be unseen. This is why authenticity is one of the greatest powers a super empath holds. It is not about confrontation. It is about living so deeply in alignment with who you are that no one can distort your reality again. And as those illusions fall away, the narcissist begins to realize the one thing they never wanted to face, that their power was never real, and their control was only an illusion sustained by your belief. Self-mastery is the turning point, where the super empath evolves from someone who once absorbed pain to someone who transforms it into power. It is no longer about seeing through manipulation or setting boundaries alone. It is about becoming so deeply aligned with personal strength, clarity, and purpose that no external force can shake that foundation. This is the stage where the narcissist finally realizes their influence has ended, because nothing they say or do can penetrate the inner calm that now surrounds you. Mastery begins with self-awareness. It is the recognition of patterns, not just in others, but within yourself. It is seeing where you once gave too much, trusted too quickly, or sought validation from the wrong source. It is not about blame. It is about reclaiming control. When you understand yourself deeply, you no longer fear the games others play. You rise above them with a sense of quiet authority that cannot be faked. This presence is unnerving to a narcissist because it reflects a level of strength they cannot comprehend, let alone control. Emotional discipline follows. Self-mastery means choosing your responses with intention, not impulse. It means staying calm when provoked, centered when challenged, and focused when distractions arise. Every act of restraint reinforces your independence. Every choice to remain steady denies the narcissist the reaction they seek. This consistency sends a message more powerful than words. You are no longer a participant in their drama, and no amount of pressure will pull you back. With mastery comes a shift in energy. The empath no longer vibrates with fear, anxiety, or self-doubt. Instead, they radiate confidence, peace, and clarity. The narcissist feels this shift immediately, and it unsettles them because they can sense their grip slipping. They may try harder, becoming more desperate, but their efforts only reveal their lack of power. The dynamic has changed completely. The empath is no longer the one being pursued. They are the one who has risen beyond reach. This transformation is not about becoming cold or detached. It is about becoming whole. Self-mastery means living from a place of inner strength so secure that external chaos can no longer find a way in. It means embodying peace in such a way that manipulation has nowhere to land. And it means stepping into life with a confidence that radiates from within, not because of what you've endured, but because of who you have become. For the narcissist, this is the final breaking point. They are left facing the truth that they cannot touch what they cannot control, And for the empath, it is liberation. The moment where survival turns to empowerment and empowerment transforms into unstoppable freedom. Freedom is the final victory, the place where the cycle of manipulation can no longer touch you. It is not won through confrontation, arguments, or the need to prove who you are. It is achieved through the decision to rise, to heal, and to live beyond the reach of anyone who once tried to control your narrative. For a narcissist, watching this freedom unfold is the deepest form of torment, because it confirms what they fear most, that their influence has no lasting power over someone who has reclaimed their life. This freedom is not just about walking away, it is about walking into a higher version of yourself. It is the quiet strength of knowing your worth without needing validation. It is the calm confidence of setting boundaries without guilt. It is the inner peace that comes from no longer reacting to chaos, no longer feeding illusions, and no longer questioning your truth. It is a state of being where your happiness becomes your shield, your growth becomes your answer, and your life becomes a reflection of strength rather than struggle. For the narcissist, this is unbearable because it leaves them with nothing to hold on to. The emotional strings they once pulled no longer exist. The drama they once created no longer draws you in. The fear they once used to keep you small no longer has a voice. They are left with the emptiness they have always tried to escape, and your freedom only magnifies it. While they remain trapped in patterns of control, you have chosen liberation, and that choice is a mirror of everything they cannot be. True freedom also brings a sense of compassion for yourself that is unshakable. It is no longer about blaming or resenting, but about honoring your own journey. Every challenge you faced became a lesson. Every wound became a source of wisdom. Every moment of doubt became a stepping stone toward clarity. You are no longer the same person who once questioned their worth. You are the person who turned pain into power, confusion into clarity, and fear into freedom. This is the ultimate act of defiance, not through revenge, but through peace. It is living so fully in your truth that no one else can distort it. It is choosing joy over chaos, strength over fear, and growth over control. It is the realization that the greatest way to end the cycle is not to fight harder, but to rise higher. And in that rise, you deliver the one outcome a narcissist can never handle. You live a life they cannot touch, a life defined not by what you endured, but by the unstoppable power of who you have become. The true measure of growth is not in how loudly you announce your strength, but in how quietly you carry it. The moment you no longer seek to prove your worth to anyone, you have reached a level of power that no one can take from you. It is the silent confidence of someone who has faced storms, walked through shadows, and emerged with a light so steady that it no longer flickers at the presence of darkness. This is the strength that builds an unshakable foundation, one that no manipulation or deceit can crack. When you reach this state, your energy begins to change. It becomes calm, deliberate, and deeply grounded. You no longer react out of fear or anger. You respond with clarity and self-respect. Your presence no longer carries the weight of past wounds. It carries the essence of healing and self-assurance. This shift is profound because it signals that your identity is no longer tied to what was done to you, but to what you have built within yourself. It is a transformation so deep that those who once thrived on your insecurities can no longer recognize the person you have become. In this space, forgiveness becomes a powerful choice, not for them, but for yourself. Forgiveness is not permission for the past to repeat. It is the release of its grip on your present. It is the decision to no longer carry the weight of what someone else could not give. It is an act of self-liberation that clears space for peace, joy, and purpose. This kind of forgiveness does not make you weak. It makes you untouchable. Because when you no longer hold resentment, you cannot be provoked. When you no longer carry anger, you cannot be controlled. You move through life with a lightness that others cannot disturb. And from this lightness comes vision. You begin to see beyond survival and into creation. You start to build a life that is not defined by what you escaped, but by what you are becoming. Every decision you make is rooted in self-respect. Every boundary you set is a declaration of value. Every step you take is a movement toward a future designed by your own hands, guided by your own wisdom and fueled by your own belief in what is possible. This is where true transformation occurs, not in the absence of struggle, but in the mastery of it. The pain that once confined you becomes the force that propels you. The fear that once silenced you becomes the fire that drives you. The doubt that once weakened you becomes the reason you rise stronger than before. And in that strength, you find the ultimate truth. No one can define you, control you, or diminish you. Not anymore, not ever again.